Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would talk about this little video that ended up piquing my interest. And this video is going to be by this one channel named Boxing Ego. And of course, Boxing Ego is a part of a group called New Media, which is pretty much the LDBC when it comes down to it. But so we all know what narratives that they try to push. However, I did think that this video was very interesting, and I did think that Ego actually had a certain amount of very, very good points in this video. And the fighter that we're going to be talking about specifically in this video is a fighter by the name of Vasyl Lomachenko. And Lomachenko, of course, in my opinion, is one of the best fighters in the world. I do truly believe that he is one of the most talented fighters in the world. But we have really yet to discover, in my opinion, how great Vasyl Lomachenko really is. I do think that he is a great talent. Of course, he has a very extensive and expansive amateur background. I believe that he was a gold medalist in the Olympics, and he does have some very big wins in his career, such as over to Nicholas Walters, Guillermo Rigondeaux, Gary Russell Jr., Jorge Linares. There may even be a couple of others that I'm personally forgetting at the current moment in time. However, of course, in the last mega fight that Vasyl Lomachenko was in, he did end up losing that fight against Teofimo Lopez. And not only did you end up losing, even though I did think that it was a competitive fight, but the reason why he lost was because he was not courageous enough to take enough chances. And that is the clear reason why he lost that fight. Well, it appears that George Kambosos, who seems to have the majority of the titles right now, the only title I believe that he does not have, of course, is Devin Haney's WBC championship for the lightweight division. But it seems like Vasyl Lomachenko may get a golden opportunity next year in the first half of 2022 to possibly get a fight with Mr. George Kambosos Jr. And I think that would be a very great opportunity for Vasyl Lomachenko because that would give him an opportunity to possibly get back his old titles. So we'll see all in all what he is able to do. But the big question overall about Vasyl Lomachenko is this. How great of a fighter is he really, and can he really reclaim back his titles? I believe that he can more than likely probably beat a George Kambosos. But if you're going to be compared on that all-time great level with some of the other all-time great boxers in the history of the sport, you're not only going to have to defeat someone overall like a George Kambosos, you're also going to have to defeat some of the other top competitors as well, whether they be at 135, maybe 130, because of course Vasyl Lomachenko, he's not really a natural 135 pounder, but when it comes down to it all in all, Vasyl Lomachenko, because of his talent level, he is going to have a lot of expectations on his shoulders. And that means that Vasyl Lomachenko, if he ever wants to get back to that all-time great level, he is going to have to start beating repeated A-grade fighters. That means, maybe a Ryan Garcia, a Gervonta Tank Davis, a Devin Haney, a Shakur Stevenson, an Oscar Valdez, any one of those fighters. I personally think that 140 pounds probably is a little bit too much out of his range. But when it comes down to it, Vasyl Lomachenko, even if he were able to defeat some of the other fighters that I just named off, that would certainly make it for a first ballot Hall of Fame career. And I think that Vasyl Lomachenko already is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer anyway because he very clearly is a great fighter. But how great is he really? We're going to talk about that in this video. And let's see overall what Boxing Ego has to say.
What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you throw a like on the video. Listen, I don't know how you found my video, but somehow, some way, you made it. Please help others arrive at the content by throwing the like. Vasyl Lomachenko, he wants to fight against George Kambosos, who just beat top-ranked fighter Teofimo Lopez. Says, can Loma regain again? Vasyl Lomachenko wants to fight George Kambosos Jr. next, says Top Ranks Prez Todd DeBuff. He wants his titles back. Now, off the beginning of the article, there's a problem. He says he wants his titles back, but he lost his titles, and he lost them to Teofimo Lopez. And it's not like it was a controversial thing.
I would agree with that. And you are going to see certain articles especially be very biased towards Lomachenko, because that's what a fanboy is, And Vasyl Lomachenko does have a lot of fans, especially of the Caucasian group when it comes down to it, because they do want Vasyl Lomachenko to regain his spot as the number one pound-for-pound fighter. It just is what it is. And Vasyl Lomachenko, once again, I think that he is a tremendous fighter. But how great are you really? Because when I seen you overall against Teofimo Lopez, and remember, I understand that Teofimo Lopez is bigger, he's more powerful than you, he was a big threat. But at the end of the day, Canelo Alvarez and Alexander Usyk and, Tyson Fury and, I'm not necessarily going to mention Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford quite as of yet because I don't think that they've really fought an opponent that is, at least as of yet, been bigger than them in terms of not only height and reach, but in weight and stature. But at the end of the day, if you're going to be promoted as the number one pound for pound fighter, you have to get past that matchup, especially if it is looked at as a 50-50 matchup, which is what it was heading into that fight. So if you're Vasyl Lomachenko and if you're debated to be the number one pound for pound fighter, you have to pull off that matchup, and he just didn't. So as of right now, Vasyl Lomachenko, he can't be in that number one pound for pound conversation. He can maybe be at the bottom of the top 10 pound for pound list. But if he is going to regain a spot within the top 5 pound for pound, he's not only going to have to defeat George Kambosos, in my opinion, but he also is going to more than likely probably go after Gervonta Tank Davis. And that would be a mega fight.
Or anything. Like, as if we don't know Teofimo did enough to win the fight. So it's like you can already see the stages being set. Why are they saying he wants his titles back? Just because you once claimed the title, that doesn't mean they're your titles. Like, for example, the same people with old media probably won't say Deontay Wilder wants his WBC title back, seeing how he lost it to Tyson.
Well, I agree with you slightly, Eagle, but are you a person that, you have that same energy with other fighters? Like, I guarantee that Eagle overall at one point in time said that Wilder overall the champ, even though when he wasn't the champ. You know how many times I heard them say that? So I understand what you're saying, Eagle, but come on, let's be real. You have some bias as well.
Fury. But you can already tell the persuasive writing. It says Vasyl Lomachenko has approached George Kambosos to discuss a fight to rightfully decide the lightweight's number one division, says top-ranked president. Lomachenko shown in a performance so dominant over Richard Comey that he refused to pursue a knockout and instead gestured for his opponent trainer to withdraw.
That he refused to knock him out. Well, did Vasyl Lomachenko really refuse to knock that person out, or could he not knock him out because maybe he was a little bit better than what he thought, and maybe all in all he had to pace himself because Richard Comey showed that he had decent power? Now it did look like Vasyl Lomachenko was coasting a little bit to me when it came down to it, but like I said, I think that he was coasting because overall he said, I don't want to get knocked out by this guy. I don't want to possibly get hurt by this guy and put myself in trouble. So all in all, I'm going to keep moving around. I'm going to keep moving at angles, and if the knockout comes, then it comes.
From their man in the fight. Once again, I don't understand why this is being written like this, but I didn't write the article. They're giving Lomachenko a bunch of credit for trying to bite off of Roy Jones Jr. and not succeeding in doing so, right? Lomachenko, he tried to showboat, and he was like, man, get this guy out of here. And then after his opponent got a second win and he wasn't...
I would agree. It was showboating, and I don't have a problem with that, but, like I said, let's not overall try to advertise this as, oh, he was being classy. It's not like he was Tyson Fury in the Derek Chisora fight when he was begging the referee overall to stop the fight because he was whooping his ass so bad. Or Roy Jones Jr., against that one, I don't even remember that dude was from. Maybe he was a Jamaican fighter. I can't remember.
Able to actually stop him. So, to me, that's an L. Like, that doesn't look good. Doesn't look good when you're trying to showboat and you possibly could have got another knockdown or a stoppage, and then you play around, and then you can't seem to get this guy out of here. Says he had lost 3 world titles to Teofimo Lopez, who in his first defense had them ripped away in a shock defeat with Kambosos. And to me, I picked Kambosos, so I guess I'm just going to continue plugging away at it in the world of boxing.
Well, did you really pick Kambosos, or did you say that Kambosos had a chance? I would have to see. Now, maybe you did pick Kambosos, and if you did, all credit to you. I personally picked Teofimo Lopez because, of course, I thought that all around he is the more talented fighter. And I still believe that Teofimo Lopez is probably all around the more talented fighter than George Kambosos. But he was fighting a guy that had a very similar style. And when you fight a guy that has a very similar style, it can be possibly the hardest fight of your life. And on top of that, not only did Teofimo Lopez have a long layoff, but he possibly fought the dumbest fight that I think he possibly could have fought.
But I feel like I'm on my own island when it comes to this sport and my thoughts. People call everything an upset. And to me, Teofimo, he's 22, 23 years old. He's a young cat. He beat Lomachenko fair and square, but styles make fights lay.
I agree. The word upset or hype job or goats or all that stuff or pound for pound, there's a certain amount of words overall that get thrown around way too much, when it comes down to it. But what I will say is this: in my opinion, George Kambosos versus Teofimo, excuse me, I do believe that it was an upset, but I don't believe that it was a 13-1 upset. I believe that it was more 7-1. I think that 13-1, especially considering the circumstances, that was way, way, way too high.
Offs. He hadn't fought in like a year. A lot of promises that Teofimo's side made on, getting Kambosos out of there and things like that. So I don't look at these fights as these massive upsets. I feel like people being called bums and cherry picked and also massive upset gets thrown around so casually in the sport of boxing. I don't look at Kambosos as this massive upset. Like, I don't care what the sports book and
I would agree. I don't think that it's a massive upset either, or at least not, shell shocking. Because when I saw George Kambosos pull it off, I was not shell shocked because I realized going into that fight that it could be a very potential tough fight for Teofimo, especially if he did not play his cards right, and of course he did not. So it is what it is. Now, the one that I was personally shell shocked about was Sandor Martin versus Mikey Garcia. And very rarely do I ever get surprised because, once again, and I'm not trying to brag here or anything like that, but I do pride myself in having a realistic scope. I did not expect Sandor Martin to outbox Mikey Garcia the way that he did.
with them
I mean, Sandor Martin was a complete unknown, and he went in there and completely, almost embarrassed him.
are saying, because that's just people who put money down and had a belief that the fight was going to go a certain way. But from my knowledge, there were still questions. The point I'm making is there's still questions about a young fighter until you get to like the Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao stage of your career where you have 50 or 70 fights, to your name, and you fought the highest of caliber. We don't really know a lot about a lot of fighters. And I think
Well, I would agree with that, but then you would have to have the same energy with the Terrence Bud Crawford. This is why I'm saying, I think that you're right on the money when you say that. But then at the same time, you always want to give Deontay Wilder and Terrence Bud Crawford a hell of a lot of credit when, let's be real, how many A-grade fighters have they really fought? He fought Sean Porter. That's a great A-grade win, but Sean Porter is not an A-plus fighter. He's lost every big fight in his career. It just is what it is, at least, against the A or A-plus fighters. And when it comes to Deontay Wilder, he has a great win over Luis Ortiz, but every time he fought Tyson Fury, and I'm not saying that Deontay is not a great fighter to a degree, because in my opinion, he is an A-grade fighter, but he just can't be A-plus.
That in this microwave society and social media digital age that we live in, people forget that. But I digress. Let's keep going. It says Top Ranks Todd DeBuff, who promotes Lomachenko, said this about chasing Kambosos Jr. And I'll highlight it, and we'll do yellow. Lomachenko has made it very evident to us and to his team that that's the fight he would like. We are amicably trying to have discussions with them for a fight in the first half of next year. Top-ranked promoter Bob Arum previously told Sky Sports, "I think it will happen," and insisted that Lomachenko would travel to Kambosos' home country of Australia. Right? I am optimistic that at the end of 2022, we will have Loma fighting back for the titles, Arum said. Yeah, and it's Dean Lauren again, the Australian promoter who worked with Top Rank to stage Pacquiao versus Jeff Horn in Brisbane, said the key thing for George is...
And if Vasyl Lomachenko does get that fight against George Kambosos Jr., he is going to have to be very careful if it is in Australia, because we all see what happened with the Jeff Horn Manny Pacquiao situation. So we'll see what happens when it comes down to it. But, now I did think that fight was competitive. So I understand maybe why Jeff Horn got the decision, but the scorecards at the end of the day were completely just out of pocket. Like I said, they were like 9 rounds to 3. No way Jeff Horn won that fight 9 rounds to 3.
If he wants to become massive in Australia, what he's got to do is defend these titles against a big name and win. If he keeps winning, Australians will love him. Ukraine's Lomachenko is a 3-weight world champion, who was rated among the world's elite boxers before his surprise loss to Lopez. Again, listen, if all these fights, if what I'm saying is wrong, how come I have content and I pick Teofimo? What do I know about boxing that all these other writers and everyone's saying every single fight is a
Well, did you really pick Teofimo Lopez, or did you just say that Teofimo Lopez had a chance? I would have to see, because I highly doubt a person that got the Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder trilogy as ass backwards as you got. I have a hard time believing that you just strictly picked Teofimo Lopez to win that fight, but maybe I'm wrong. I have a feeling that you said that they had a chance to win, but I could be wrong about that. But once again, boxing ego and some of these guys, ego especially, he tries to act like he's on a different planet compared to everybody else. And I think that it's good to have that confidence, but at the end of the day, are you really on a different planet compared to everybody else? Because let's take a look at that Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury trilogy prediction. You were still one of these idiots that claimed that Tyson Fury was one that was cheating and he had an egg weight in the glove and blah, 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 all sort of bullshit, and look what happened.
upset aren't telling you. I literally picked Lomachenko to lose to Teofimo via decision, and that's what happened. I literally picked George Kambosos to win a decision against Teofimo, and that's what's happening. But every time you read these articles, it's like, oh, Lomachenko. It's because people aren't even. It's like a lot of fanboyism in the sport of boxing, and I don't really.
Well, of course, whenever you watch sports, in general, there is a lot of fanboyism. That's why you cannot rely on the majority of what people say. But you would be a fanboy as well. That's why you got the Deontay Wilder versus, Tyson Fury fight so ass backwards.
Feel
I
people
mean, you weren't even 5% correct on that.
who appreciate the sweet science and respect it. So you see it a lot with the persuasive writing and like old media specifically. They put Lomachenko on such a pedestal. It was like he could do no wrong. And there's no fighter that's really infallible, especially a guy like Lomachenko. I think when I see Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford, Floyd Mayweather, and David Benavidez, I see a ton of guys, Jerron Booth.
David Benavidez. You think that David Benavidez is a person that is an elite fighter, or at least a person that is unstoppable? Now, why didn't he say someone like a Tyson Fury? Why didn't he say someone like a Alexander Usyk, or someone like someone along those lines, or a Saul Canelo Alvarez? Because he don't like those fighters. So that's how you know overall that he has a certain bias, because those fighters have pretty much already been proven to be the best of their divisions. But anyway.
In this, I feel their styles are a lot harder to beat. Like if you look at Lomachenko's.
So David Benavidez, you think David Benavidez is a better fighter all around than Vasyl Lomachenko? A person that has no defense, and a person all in all that has not A-grade head movement, and a person that hasn't even fought one A-grade fighter in his career? I got you.
Fights.
Now, are you saying that because you believe David Benavidez truly is an A-grade fighter? Now, don't get me wrong, I think that he's an A-grade fighter. But is he really saying that because he believes that David Benavidez is super impossible to beat? Or is he saying that because he loves to use David Benavidez's name to tear down Canelo Alvarez? I think we all know the answer.
Lomachenko's face, especially as he's moved up and he's not way bigger, because when he was a featherweight, he was significantly bigger than a lot of his opponents.
No, not really. Lomachenko overall, he is significantly smaller, at least compared to a certain amount of these guys. So let's not pull that narrative. Now, if you want to talk about the Guillermo Rigondeaux fight, yeah, he was significantly bigger than Guillermo Rigondeaux. But he was not significantly bigger than that of Gary Russell Jr. or, he was not significantly bigger than that of Nicholas Walters. So let's stop the bullshit. All right, it is what it is.
Look at the face-offs and stuff. But as he's got to lightweight, it's like
because Lomachenko is not a natural lightweight. But the point overall being is this: if Vasyl Lomachenko is going to be remembered as an all-time great fighter, it doesn't matter if you're slightly outweighed at 135. Because at the end of the day, if Terrence Bud Crawford moved up to 154 or Errol Spence did that, they would be expected to win. And if Canelo were even able to move up to 175, possibly 200, he would be expected to win. This is why, in my opinion, Canelo was the number one pound-for-pound fighter. Because there's no other fighter that has those type of expectations on his shoulders. Only he does. Vasyl Lomachenko had those expectations at one point in time, but he's shown that he cannot live up to them as a Canelo Alvarez can. So we'll see where Vasyl Lomachenko goes.
His style, and then they're gonna say he's old and has so many fights and things like that. But he hasn't looked the same because guys are bigger and his size, or maybe a little bit bigger than him, and styles make fights. So Lomachenko, I think he's a good fighter, but he's struggling to finish a guy he has badly hurt again with Richard Comey. And this was the same case with Jose Pedraza. The same guy, Jose Pedraza, Gervonta Davis, in a step up, fought the guy at his true weight class at the time, Pedraza, on the co-feature to Badu Jack versus James DeGale in New York. And Tank Davis, who only had 15 fights or so, destroyed Pedraza and won every second of the round, and then ended up stopping him. He ended up stopping him. So
Yeah, but I'm not necessarily worried about. Excuse me. I'm not necessarily worried about Vasyl Lomachenko just in terms of winning the big fights later on. I'm not worried about Vasyl Lomachenko not being able to stop an opponent because, even though he has a great power, he doesn't have the same powers as Gervonta Tank Davis. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. So Gervonta Tank Davis, like in his last fight, he failed to stop Isa Cruz. In fact, he almost he almost didn't stop Yuriorkis Gamboa, a person who is known as not having that great of a chin. Now Vasyl Lomachenko could go into that next fight, face Yuriorkis Gamboa, and knock him out within 3 rounds. Does that mean that I would say that Gervonta Tank Davis said, "Oh man, that I think that that's a bad sign"? I mean, some could take it as that, but styles make fights. At the end of the day, Vasyl Lomachenko is a clear A-grade fighter, but I do need to see him beat the real deal A-grade fighters at 135. Devin Haney, Gervonta Tank Davis, George Kambosos is an A-grade fighter, but he's not on the same level as those other two. So I think that if he can beat George Kambosos, that's a great start. That'll give you the opportunity to call out whoever you want then. And then we'll see how much of a real deal fighter, at least in terms of the all-time great level, how great Vasyl Lomachenko is really.
It's just weird to see when I read articles and it says Lomachenko's 3-weight and he's rated elite before his surprise loss. It really wasn't a surprise. The only reason you guys are surprised is because you don't really know ish about boxing, and it shows. And you didn't expect it to happen because you don't know ish about boxing. So I don't know.
Well, like I said, Ego, it's not like you get every prediction correct. And not to beat a dead horse here, but like I said, that's why, you got that Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder fight so ass backwards. These guys always claim to know everything about boxing, but then when it comes to one of the fighters that they like, and then they'll try to predict that, oh man, I have a feeling that a knockout's going to happen. They're saying that whole entire shit with Deontay Wilder versus Fury. And what happened? Fury whooped that ass for the third time. All right? So let's be real, Ego. It's not like you don't get predictions wrong either. All right, it is what it is.
It's going to be interesting.
But at the end of the day, the Vasyl Lomachenko versus Teofimo Lopez fight, it was not the biggest upset to me. I would say that Vasyl Lomachenko was a 2-1, 3-1 favorite. But, when the fighter is able to turn around those odds, it's not a humongous upset.
Interesting to see what George Kambosos decides. It's clear that he sounds and believes he's in the driver's seat, and somebody's going to have to fight him in Australia. I don't think that would be the case with Gervonta Davis. I don't see Davis giving up his A-starness, A-side power to fight Kambosos in Australia. Again, I'm not Davis's manager. He hasn't personally said this, but I think Davis is such a A-side.
I do believe that Gervonta Tank Davis would be the A-side in terms of monetarily. I believe that he would be the A-side overall over anyone within that weight division. But if Vasyl Lomachenko or George Kambosos does have 3 out of the 4 main titles within that division, when it comes down to it, Gervonta Tank Davis may have to give them a 50-50 split if he does want that fight, because at the end of the day, they're giving him the opportunity to face for 3 out of the 4 main belts. So I could somewhat understand a 50-50 split for that, whereas the Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence situation, there's really no debate where Terrence Crawford deserves a 50-50 split. Because not only does Errol Spence have the better resume, but if Errol Spence does get past Yordenis Ugas, which I predict more than likely he will, he's going to have 3 out of the 4 main belts. So like I said, there's almost nothing that Terrence Crawford has over Errol Spence Jr. in terms of being the debatable A-side or even with him.
Don't see them giving up ground, even if Kambosos has titles. But maybe that's a fight that's on the table. It says Lomachenko has rebounded with 2 impressive wins. Lomachenko, age 33, among a division of younger rivals, Cambosos, Lopez, Devin Haney, Gervonta Davis, and Ryan Garcia, but has shown no signs of slowing down. Again, more persuasive writing from whoever wrote this article. To me, again, maybe I'm on my own planet in boxing, and I'm just going to keep doing my thing. But Lomachenko's
Well, I think that you're a little bit more logical and objective than Dante and Aki TV, but you still have your moments of delusion. So, it is what it is.
definitely showed signs of.
And that's not me trying to tear down ego or anything like that. It's great overall when you believe that, especially when you're on a whole nother level compared to a lot of other people. I think that that can be a great thing. But if we're just being real here, if ego is trying to say that he's some sort of Nostradamus, let's be real, ego. Like I said, there's a couple of predictions that because of your emotion and because of your fanboyism as well, you got completely ass backwards. And none of us are going to get 100% accuracy. It's impossible to do that, especially in sports, because styles make matchups and you never know completely what is going to happen. But when it comes down to it, like I said, you do have to, at least if you're a reliable source, be somewhat overall based in logic and objectivity. So it is what it is.
Slowing down. How did he not show signs of slowing down? The first guy he fought that was calling him out, Teofimo Lopez, that had a pulse and, had some good intangibles, some boxing ability.
That had a pulse. What are you saying? That the guys that Lomachenko fought before them are bums? Well, what I'll say overall is this. I do think that Teofimo was clearly the biggest challenge for him at 135. And when Lomachenko fought him, he lost. So if Lomachenko is going to be back in that pound-for-pound conversation, he's going to have to beat some of the big boys. Is what it is.
The power, speed, youth and hunger, and was tenacious, beat him. Beating Nakatani and Richard Comey, I mean, what are we talking about? See, and I'm going to have to save this for another video, but we have to really start outlining.
What I'll say is this. Vasyl Lomachenko, I do think that those are very decent matchups for him to take, just because you can tell that the size and the power, especially at 135, it's a problem for him, especially in some of those bigger matchups. So I agree that he looked impressive, but those guys are not A-grade fighters. Nakatani and Richard Comey, they're not A-grade fighters. So we do have to see Vasyl Lomachenko in the ring if he is going to be back in that top 5 pound-for-pound conversation. We have to see him in the ring with Gervonta Tank Davis, Devin Haney, and George Kambosos. Point blank, period. Possibly even in a rematch with Teofimo Lopez, but I don't know if that's going to happen because I'm not sure if Teofimo can even make 135 anymore.
What is being put out? Because there's a lot of people that put out what they want to put out in the world of boxing. And my thing is this. When it comes to Tank fighting a guy like Isa Cruz that has never been stopped and never been dropped that I can remember, right? And people like Ryan Garcia are saying that Isa Cruz and all of Tank Davis's opponents are C+ fighters. So it's like, who made?
Well, I think that Isa Cruz is, if you want to argue that he's better than Nakatani and, Richard Comey, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. But Isa Cruz is not an A-grade fighter.
Richard Comey.
There's a reason why those numbers tanked on pay-per-view. It just is what it is.
And Nakatani, the poster boys for, lightweight prestigious. Like, what made that such a prestigious accomplishment? Because Lomachenko's fighting him? Because top-ranked fighters are fighting him, Teofimo? It sounds weird.
I don't think all in all that it's necessarily super prestigious, but it is an impressive win to the fact to where if you want to see a fighter come back, or if you think that Lomachenko can come back well, he did put on 2 very, very decent performances. One against Nakatani and one against Richard Comey. Now, these guys are not A-grade fighters, but they are fighters that have a decent size advantage over Lomachenko, and they both have decent power for the division. So, of course, if you're a person that wants to see Lomachenko come back, or you believe that possibly he can make a comeback, those are at least decent matchups. It's kind of like Deontay Wilder, if he were to have his next fight, if he were to face someone, say, like, I'm trying to think overall for the division. I don't know, maybe he would face, like, the winner of Luis Ortiz versus Charles Martin, and he overall were to get a very decent knockout. Or maybe he would face Kubrat Pulev next and get a knockout, and he looks very good, So that's kind of what it would be like.
to me because I really think Isa Cruz is a nice. I think he's nice. I can't wait to see his next fight and where he's at in his career. I can see him giving lightweights real problems. Richard Comey, I would never.
Which lightweight specifically, though? I mean, let's be real. Don't get me wrong. I don't think Nakatani and Richard Comey, I don't think that they're going anywhere either. I think Isa Cruz is a little bit better than them, but it's not by like a whole completely different level. Isa Cruz is a decent fighter, but he's not an A-grade fighter.
Put him in.
Like, Isa Cruz is not going to defeat Devin Haney. He's not going to beat Vasyl Lomachenko. He's not going to defeat overall. I don't even know if he would defeat George Kambosos, to be quite honest with you, or Ryan Garcia. You know, Isa Cruz is a decent fighter, but these guys have been trying to hype up Isa Cruz just to make Devonta Tank Davis look better, when in all reality, Devonta Tank Davis, he's been usually facing B-grade fighters, if not C-grade fighters. It is what it is.
Any type of top 10 kind of conversation of real guys that I think are going to demolish a division. Yes, he has power, but he's also been stopped aggressively by Teofimo, things like that. It says Lomachenko is a poster boy for many things, said DeBuff. He was aggressively matched. He came right out of the amateurs and fought for a world title, second fight. He doesn't look at a setback as his value going down, but it has. He looks at it at a reset to go forward. He has come back with 2 brilliant wins.
I agree that his value has gone down a little bit, but Ego, are you going to keep the same energy with the Deontay Wilder? You know? So it is what it is. Once again, we already know what the narratives that you try to play. So it is what it is.
He never says no to any opponents. He wants his titles back. But again, he lost them fair and square, and his team wasn't smart enough to put a rematch clause in there or chose not to, so it's not really his titles because he had them. Lomachenko's most recent win produced a unique moment. After knocking Comey down heavily, he signaled for the rival's corner to stop the fight, which I already talked about. When they let Comey continue, Loma chose to coast. See, look, bro, who is writing these? It says, bro, they are giving Lomachenko way too much clout. It says when they let Comey continue, Lomachenko chose, so he chose to coast to a unanimous decision win. So I'm supposed to believe that Lomachenko first.
I agree with that. I think overall that's a bunch of horse shit. I do believe that Lomachenko, when it comes down to it, you know, I think that he had to coast because all in all, you know, he may have had a little bit more trouble with Comey than what he thought, you know. But it is what it is.
First of all, Comey was hurt, and he looked like he was in bad shape. But Lomachenko, after he showboated, I'm supposed to believe that he chose to coast and allow.
What if smartphones were more than just smart? The all-new Google Pixel 6, with a 24-hour adaptive battery that sends power precisely where you need it. Google Pixel 6.
When thinking about the evolution of man, it's always a good idea to remember we are animals.
This all sounds like propaganda. He chose to allow Comey to survive. Like, he carried him. Bro, he couldn't stop him. There's either if whoever wrote this article and the people who think that in this given situation, a dangerous puncher who's big, Lomachenko had him badly hurt and chose to allow him and play with his food, then Lomachenko's an idiot. Because
I would agree.
As you don't play with your food.
And Vasyl Lomachenko is not a stupid fighter. He does not play with his food. And well, actually, you know what? Let me not say that. I have seen him play with his food before, but I don't think that he is going to do that at this point in time in his career. I do think that Vasyl Lomachenko, at least in this fight, I think that he wanted to stop him, but I don't think that he could. Because Vasyl Lomachenko, I have seen him play with his food before, but he was able to stop them, whether it be against Nicholas Walters, Jason Sosa, you know, certain fighters that were very decent contenders, but he was able to completely play with them.
Boxing.
And he pretty much played with Richard Comey as well. I don't think that Richard Comey won a single round, but at the end of the day, there's a reason why Vasyl Lomachenko could not stop him, because it's obvious that the power and the size of these guys, it still does bother him to a certain degree. That's why I am going to have to see Vasyl Lomachenko against some of the other A-grade fighters. It's going to be very interesting.
If you have an opponent who's a vicious puncher and needs a knockout to win and is capable in terms of has that type of power in their gloves to do these turnaround punches if they land. I mean, it's foolish for any fighter. Anybody who's a great fighter and an elite fighter will tell you it's foolish to play with your food. If you have an
I would agree.
opportunity to safely get someone out of there, that's what you do. I mean, this is not even just exclusive to boxing. We could talk about, let's say, a police officer. If they get called and this guy has hostages and he has weapons, and they have an opportunity to take the shot, and these people who are endangered, you have a chance to end this standoff, and the person is not trying to go peacefully, and you have an opportunity to, like, where there's a lapse in judgment, or the hostages are safe and you could take a clear shot, shoot them in the leg or whatever, then that's what the cop would do, especially if there's an opportunity. So that doesn't even sound advisable that Lomachenko would allow a guy to survive 5 extra rounds when he needs a knockout to win. That's just foolish. Says Lomachenko is a special individual. He is incredibly gifted talent-wise. When he had Comey hurt, he didn't want to go forwards. He looked for help from the referee. It was a sign of showmanship and class. He never threw hard to Comey's head.
I disagree with that once again. That's a little bit of propaganda. I tend to agree. Because Vasyl Lomachenko, you can tell that still the size, overall, and the power of some of these guys, that it is bothersome towards him.
It sounds like Top Rank paid the Sky Sports or something to write this article. He had an incredible observation regarding this. Yada yada yada. So the bottom line, I told you the fights that I want to see for Kambosos, and it's not Lomachenko. It's either Devin Haney, and that will solidify who's truly undisputed since the WBC made a mess, or Gervonta Davis. He's the most lit dude in the.
Well, of course, overall, that you'd rather see those two guys. Now, of course, at the end of the day, he'll allege because, well, Gervonta Davis looks like debatably the most talented guy there. And I understand that, but the real reason also is because Gervonta Davis, when it comes down to it, Gervonta Davis, he's a black fighter. It is what it is. Let's just be real. All right? It is what it is. That's the main reason overall why they want to see Gervonta Davis or Devin Haney get that fight, because they don't want someone like a Vasyl Lomachenko getting that unification fight. All right? It is what it is.
Like division.
So once again, these guys, they say overall that, it's all about undisputed. No, it's not really about undisputed. It's about their fighters getting the fight.
Anyway, I don't know if the fight would happen in Australia, but it's a great fight, and I would like to see either one of those. You could see Top Rank, they're trying to put their bid in, and we'll see. We'll see what Kambosos and team decides, but they're already trying to put the bug in the ear to stifle the black fighter, Devin Haney, who has an opportunity to be undisputed, and they also want to prevent Kambosos and George Kambosos, Tank and Kambosos, because at the end of the day, that would skyrocket Tank's profile as well if he could get.
Yes, and that's the reason why you don't want Vasyl Lomachenko to get that fight. Because all in all that will put him back in the top 10 pound per pound. And all in all that whoever beats Kambosos, whoever overall gets to Kambosos first, they're going to be in the top 10 pound per pound. So that's the reason overall why you don't want Lomachenko getting that fight.
Kambosos and win all them belts, and they're trying to give it to a 33-year-old Loma, who to me, another reason, I'm just being honest, I think Loma's a cool fighter, he's a good fighter, he has skills, but at age 33, it would be better to see Kambosos mix it up with. Lomachenko has less than 20 fights, and
Actually, when it comes down to it, it would be best to see Lomachenko versus Devin Haney or Lomachenko versus Gervonta Davis, because Lomachenko, in my opinion, is a league, if not a couple leagues, above that of a George Kambosos. So I'm hoping that Lomachenko overall, if he is able to take care of this opportunity, that we will get to see a Lomachenko or Devin Haney or Lomachenko versus Gervonta Davis fight. Because all those guys, in my opinion, are A-grade fighters. Kambosos is an A-grade fighter, but he's just not on that AA+ level.
He has 2 losses.
He has no chance, in my opinion, to defeat a Devin Haney or Gervonta Davis. At least not a great one.
So he's had opportunities. He's had some big fights, and he's already lost 2 times. I'd rather see undefeated Devin Haney, undefeated Gervonta.
Right, but one of those losses overall, when it comes down to it, it was against someone else. But I bet you want to overall be like it was to Orlando Salido in the second fight of his career. So it is what it is. But once again, you wouldn't be bitching if Deontay Wilder was getting an opportunity overall, like Dillian White versus Deontay Wilder. That's in the works potentially, and you don't care about that. So come on.
Davis, undefeated George Kambosos, right? I don't know if Teofimo's moving up like he said, so he might not be in the conversation for Kambosos rematch because his team didn't really seem like they wanted it all too much. And that's another thing. Anytime a black fighter loses, especially if it's unexpected, upset, or controversial, it's almost expected for the Andre Wards to rematch Kovalev. Almost expected for the Floyd Mayweathers to rematch Maidana or Castillo. But then a guy like Teofimo loses, a non-black fighter, and now all of a sudden, you know, there's no pressure for a rematch. Lomachenko loses to Salido. There's no...
I would agree with that. Sometimes overall that there is those certain standards. I would not necessarily have a huge problem with someone saying that.
pressure for or immediate rematch, but whatever.
Why doesn't every home in the U.S. have solar panels? The number one reason is not about sunlight or weather or even politics.
Back to what I was saying. I'd rather see Kambosos in with the young, talented fighters, and I think that overall means more because
Lomachenko is a big win as well. You cannot completely brush him under the rug. And let's be real, the main reason why you don't want to see Vasyl Lomachenko versus George Kambosos is because you know more than likely if that fight happens, Vasyl Lomachenko is going to get them titles back. It is what it is. Because let's be real, out of Devin Haney, Gervonta Tank Davis, and Vasyl Lomachenko, whoever gets to George Kambosos first is basically overall going to get them the belts. Now, that in my opinion, you know, whoever gets to him first, Devin Haney, Gervonta Tank Davis, Vasyl Lomachenko, whoever gets to him first, they'll deserve to be, you know, finally in the top 10 pound for pound, at least definitively. But when it comes down to it all in all, like I said, you know, those fighters, in my opinion, are a league above George Kambosos.
he's a good fighter. He had an opportunity. He didn't have a rematch clause, and he lost bad to Teofimo. He wouldn't throw punches. And Top Rank, it's always like some damage control after popular fighters lose unexpectedly. Oh, his shoulder was bad. He broke a butt cheek, etc., etc. So that's my 2 cents. I really want to see George Kambosos with the...
Well, listen, Ego, I understand what you're saying, that it's always an excuse, but did you not have excuses when your favorite pro-blackity fighter, Deontay Wilder, lost? Oh, you know, Tyson Fury had an egg weight in the glove. Oh, this happened. Oh, this happened. I mean, come on, you were literally making 4,700 excuses, so I don't want to hear that bullshit. You know, you keep that same energy, which we all know that you don't.
a fresher look. And Lomachenko, you know, styles make fights. Lomachenko, I don't think it's better for boxing for him to fight Kambosos. That's just being honest.
No, it's not great for you. But anyone, all in all, that, like I said, you know, all in all, I think that it's a great opportunity because it not only gives Vasyl Lomachenko another opportunity when it comes down to it, but all in all, it'll give Vasyl Lomachenko an opportunity to potentially face a Gervonta Tank Davis or that of a Devin Haney. Because let's be real, what's a bigger challenge overall to Devin Haney and overall Gervonta Tank Davis? Is it a George Kambosos or is it someone overall like a Vasyl Lomachenko? Let's be real. Now, will Vasyl Lomachenko face them? We'll see, because he hasn't seemed too hot in the past about facing someone like a Devin Haney. However, I do believe that he is interested in a Gervonta Tank Davis fight, and that would be a mega fight.
I'm not saying that the fight can't happen, but Lomachenko, age 33, he's never been on pay-per-view. That's not really a pay-per-view fight to me. Styles.
It doesn't really have to be a pay-per-view fight. You know, not every pay-per-view fight overall is a big fight. Gervonta Tank Davis in his last fight against Isa Cruz was put on pay-per-view and it completely tanked because that was not a pay-per-view fight. All right? They're probably not going to put that fight on pay-per-view. They'll probably just put it on Top Rank. So it is what it is.
Style-wise, Lomachenko and Kambosos in Australia, it doesn't hit the same. So we'll see. Ultimately, Kambosos has his own team. We'll see what he decides. Let me know what you guys think. We unpack. The future is now. The hibernation.
Anyways, that's really about it for today. But like I said, Vasyl Lomachenko has a lot to prove if he is going to be an all-time great fighter or remembered as such. He is not only going to have to get past George Kambosos, but Devin Haney and Gervonta Tank Davis as well, Shakur Stevenson, Oscar Valdez. Those are some of the other fighters that are left. Maybe even Aleo Santa Cruz a little bit later on down the line. Those are some of the fighters that are left that would do good for Vasyl Lomachenko's resume. So we'll see where he goes from here. But anyways, that's really about it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you all later.